Hello, everybody. It's John Browning with the Building Your Life podcast, and I have a very special guest with me today. Her name is Marielle Dagassan. Did I get it right?
Yes, you nailed it, John.
All
Great
right,
job.
fantastic. Awesome. We just recently actually met, and Marielle's right down here in South Florida, but she does business all over the United States. Am I right?
Yes, that's right.
Outside the United States?
No, not right now.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And what she does is something that is so needed. And we've talked about it on the Building Your Life podcast before. And it's something that Guardian just does on a very, very limited basis. So I wanted to have Marielle on to talk about what she does for not just younger people, but also people who have had events in their lives that have kind of put them behind in terms of their financial planning. And that can happen to anybody, right, Marielle? You can be 40 years old. Maybe you have a health problem. Maybe there's a lawsuit. Maybe there's something else that happened. Or maybe, frankly, let's be honest, you just made a couple not so great decisions and you got behind in your finances, your financial planning, and all that. Well, Marielle helps with that. And I've got a couple questions for you today. You're right here in West Palm Beach, right?
Yes, that's
Beach,
right.
Florida. And you can do virtual meetings with whoever, whenever, right? Well, not whenever. Let's temper that a little bit.
I don't know. I'm kind of a night owl, so if they're open to it. No.
All right. So, well, this is listened to. The Building Your Life podcast is listened to in Hawaii. So we have Hawaiian clients at Guardian Rock Wealth, so it goes all over. And I know there's at least 2 listeners in Alaska, so that also.
Wow. Hello to the best states in the union. That's great.
Yeah, there you go. Well, talk about building your best life. I was looking at your website and I saw all the pictures, and you certainly seem to be living your best life if your best life involves travel anyway.
Yeah, it sure does. And that's definitely why I'm available at all hours. We're actually taking a trip to Bali in August, and I'll also be in England, so visiting some family there. I've traveled quite a bit, and some of my family lives over in Switzerland, and then we have family that's out in Australia. So that's my European side of the family. But then I actually have the American side of the family, which is all over the US, in California, Chicago, Seattle, New York. So I've been very fortunate to travel a lot, and I'm certainly living my best life in terms of travel. And I've been to 26 countries so far, but hoping to get to 30 sooner rather than later. And then we'll see where I go from there.
Nice, nice. Well, one of the things that impressed me about you when we met is, well, compared to me, you're very young. Okay. We're just going to go there. Okay. But you were very young, but yet you've been so successful and you've done so much in such a short period of time. So you worked for Goldman Sachs. Am I right?
Yes. I worked for Goldman Sachs in New York City out of college. And I worked in private wealth management, where we manage money for ultra high net worth individuals, families, endowments. And yes, I guess I'm quite young. So I'm 25 right now, but I've managed to build a retirement portfolio worth over $1 million at this age.
Nice. So that kind of gives the credibility there. This is somebody who knows what she's talking about. And frankly, unlike many 25-year-olds, has that nest egg built up already and still continues to work on that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing is, there's no judgment about starting earlier or later. It's just about starting. My favorite quote truly is this Chinese proverb of saying that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. So starting now is the most important thing, no matter what age you're at. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work on Wall Street, where I learned all of this at such a young age. But it doesn't mean that just because you didn't start at 20, 25, that now at 30, 40, 50, there's no hope for you. There's always hope for you. And it's just a few mindset changes and just a few habit changes that can allow you to build the nest egg or the portfolio or the financial freedom that you've been looking for.
Well, here's the deal. If you've been able to do it at 25, and say you've had something happen in your life and you're, say, my age, which might be north of 50.
Like 35, John?
Yeah, it's 35. That's it. Right.
Yeah.
Somehow I managed to spend 30 years on Wall Street, but only be 35 now. That's I like.
That's impressive. That's great.
So let's just say you've been able to do it by 25. So if I have to start over, even if I'm in a hole,
Mm.
right? Even if I've gotten myself somehow in a hole and I'm in debt, there are strategies, there are tactics that you can teach how to first dig yourself out of that hole and then fill it in and start getting ahead so that yes, you can retire. Like you said, there's no such thing as too late, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I like the analogy you use there, and I like to take it from a solution-oriented approach. There's never any problem with the time you're starting, there's only solutions. What I use is a 5-step process. So we audit, then we go through your objectives, then we open accounts if needed. We have a little bonus session where I teach you what stocks and ETFs to choose for you. Then we have trading. I'll walk you through your first trade, and then upkeep. But the whole point of that is the first step is the most important, which is auditing, which is bringing awareness to where you're actually at. If you don't know where you're at right now, you'll never know how you're going to get to where you want to go. And it's really about filling that gap. So as you said, there's no reason to not think that there's hope for you in terms of your finances, regardless of your circumstance. It's just about starting with the first step, which is awareness.
And there's like with what you offer, you've got 3 packages, right? A basic, and then that next level, and the next level after that, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about like what's the basic package, and give us an example. Give us a real life example of somebody you've worked with. Obviously, don't use any names, but we'll call them Sally.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so I actually like to use, it's the Sally spender, the Sally saver, the Sally investor, it's one of
because we all
those.
have that, right? We
Oh
have
yeah.
a bent one direction or another, and sometimes it varies. Some of us have, including me, split personalities, and we go either way depending on the day.
But we have all of them within us, and that's the
Yes.
beautiful part. So it's just about finding what works for you. What I really do is, in this service-based mission of helping women, I focus mostly on women, helping to build their $1 million retirement portfolio in 5 weeks. And what I do with these packages, my bread and butter is truly the middle package, which is the elite package of that 5-step process. But I like to meet you where you're at. So if you're not there yet, then I have the basic package, which is where we teach you how to get out of debt, how to build a conscious spending plan as opposed to a budget. Budgets are icky and sticky, they don't work. And I know this firsthand because I worked with a client and we set a budget, and she lets me share the story because it's just hilarious to us. We set a budget, and the next day she spent double the amount for that category. And we just together thought, this is not the right way to do things. So I came up with the conscious spending plan approach. And that just shows you that you can spend your money and you're allowed to enjoy your life, and you can find ways that wealth works for you. So that is where I have these different packages. And the last package is truly about the mastery. If someone wants to learn everything I know about private equity, alternatives, that's sort of like my Wall Street jam, you could say. But my bread and butter is truly that middle of taking anyone from any circumstance, walking you through my 5-step process in 5 weeks. If you don't have 5 weeks, it's only 5 sessions. So it's up to you when we do them. But the objective is truly to get you to that $1 million portfolio, that you can begin to make decisions about your life that make you happy. And there's such a gap in terms of the clarity revolved around money. And it's so important to just take a step back, give yourself some grace, and then take the right decision to move forward and learn whatever it is that you want to learn to get to your ultimate outcome.
So let's just clarify one thing. I find it highly unlikely you can get to $1 million portfolio in 5 weeks, but you can build the foundation. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. You're not saying you can get $1 million in 5 weeks. You're saying that you can build this foundation on which you can build that. Now, for somebody making, let's see, South Florida average salary, this is going to shock some people in West Virginia and Ohio, but average salary down here is about 120, 125, right? For most people. And there's lots of room on either side of that. So say you're making 120 grand and you have expenses of almost that. maybe you've got expenses of say 100. That's fairly common down here in South Florida for those folks that are not in South Florida, New York City, or on the West Coast. How long, if they were flat, they didn't have any debt, do you think, and this is a tough question, I get it if you don't really want to go there, if you want to dance around it,
Let's go
I
there,
would.
John. No, let's
All right,
go there.
so I got 20,000 extra per year,
Mhm.
and it may not feel like it, but I bet you have some strategies and tactics to find that 20. So how long then do you think it would take to get to that $1 million portfolio?
Well, it does depend on your age. So that is the only factor that could result in that. But typically I work with women in their 20s and 30s who are making six figures or just about there. And they are trying to get organized with their finances. But it depends. So let's say, for example, if you have a longer time horizon, obviously in that case, you have more buffer and more room to get there. That's why we stress the importance of starting earlier rather than later. So if you are considering, thinking of starting now, the answer is yes. The answer is to start as soon as possible. And to directly answer your question on how long it takes, it would depend on the age. But so for me right now at 25, I have 40 years to retirement, but I'm already done. And all it took was 2 years working on Wall Street. That is the profound impact of time. And it's not a linear trajectory, it's exponential. So it really grows at that speed over time. And it would depend on the person, and it would depend on the risk objective. So depending if they're, willing to take on a bit more risk in the market typically returns around 8%. That's S&P 500. If you've heard that before, then that's probably S&P 500, which is what everything in the US markets is. And it just depends. If you're a bit less risky, perhaps you would target more 5%. But what John and I spoke about was really understanding that you don't need to maximize returns as much as you need to maximize your time. And if you're very concerned about getting the best investments or getting the ultimate performance out of your portfolio, it's really a customized decision on each person, which will help you reach your objectives sooner or later. And how you can help that is by adding more to your portfolio every month. So the time is really up to you, but it also depends on where you're at right now with time horizon, risk objectives. Those are the most important key factors. And then really just your commitment to your portfolio. So yes, it's true, I have strategies that can help you get from that point of awareness, which is that audit point, to then discovering what are your objectives, what are your values and beliefs about money. Do you want to retire at 60 or 50 or 75, whatever it is for you? And then we kind of decide the structure and move from there. And then it depends on your time horizon, risk objectives. But to answer the question simply, it depends. It depends on the person and what you're willing to
It's actually a
commit.
great answer. So you thought I was going to have softball questions here, and then I threw a big fastball.
I can handle it. It's nothing compared to Wall Street, John. So I can handle it.
I know. I was right there with you. So I get it. But this is what people ask me all the time. It's like, well, how long? How long? And it was really interesting. I recently onboarded a client, and it's been exactly 33 days. And we chatted, and I was kind of giving her the progress. Hey, this is what we've done so far. She said, well, I'm really concerned. I'm not making any money yet. It's only been 30 days. Okay. Usually even if you have an interest bearing security, it takes over 30 days before you get any interest from that, generally speaking. So what I want to make sure people understand is that it does take time. It takes, like you said, time, commitment, consistency. Those are kind of my three big things that I try and make sure people understand. And I try and make sure people understand, as I'm sure you do too, that the market is volatile. Like we just saw, this is dating the podcast a little bit, but we just came off a week where something happened. Two major things happened in the market. And this is where if anyone wants to tune in to a daily podcast, I do that on Substack, and you can find that almost anywhere, but it's on Substack. I put it out on LinkedIn and Facebook and all that. And it tells you the daily goings on, but that doesn't really matter when you're talking about a long-term plan to get to your $1 million, or maybe for you, it's 2 or 3 or 4 or $5 million, whatever it is for you. But we had two major events, the Republican National Convention, and then we had a company that was tied into other companies, and a software patch went into effect, and it grounded planes, and it slowed down payment systems. Banks couldn't get things done. Car dealerships had a hard time closing deals, all sorts of things. And that took the market down and down hard, especially in the tech sector. Those things happen on a regular basis, right? And you never know when they're going to happen. And when they do happen, I tell people it's a stair step up and it's an elevator shaft fall down. And it happens very, very quickly, right? So how do you explain risk to people when you're having them sort of start out on their journey?
That's a really good question, John. It really is. And what I like to think about is really a mindset shift around a long-term approach. So perhaps this is my generation, but we're a little less interested in what the news has to say about things, and we like to do our own research. I don't personally watch CNBC all the time, every day, to figure out where the market's going, because I'm looking at a 40-year time horizon. And time horizon is just how long I have until perhaps I'm going to pull money from my investment accounts. And these are retirement accounts. So if I'm looking at a 20, 30-year time horizon, 40-year, I have time to, adjust to the shifts in the market. So these daily moves, if I'm invested in low-cost ETF funds, for example, won't really affect my emotional stance towards my portfolio. And that's so important as well. There is an emotional component to everything we do, right? And there's an incredible psychology behind the money that we invest in our own, and perhaps our values or beliefs around money. And when we think about risk, it's such a personalized question, because I may find, based on my time horizon and personally working on Wall Street, I saw the markets go from, 20% drops during COVID. I was working during the COVID crashes. And then when, Russia was invading Ukraine, and we were sitting there at the desk, and all of a sudden all the clients are calling us because everything else was fine before. So in terms of chasing valuations in the market, that's not the same strategy or objective of a long-term portfolio. A long-term portfolio is building wealth over time that meets your personal values and beliefs about money and what you want to get out of the portfolio. And I believe you do this so well, John, because you work with clients so directly with a personal, customized approach of what they really want. And that's also my belief about money, is that, your risk is so personalized to you. And watching things in the market, sure, it's entertaining. And I think that's their job, is to entertain us, right?
Right.
And I personally would be working on Wall Street, and one of our clients is up on CNBC, and we're kind of watching it and watching how the stock goes. And then we hear later the behind the scenes of the whole story. So to my friends and my retail investors who are listening, the market will return over a long term. So there's nothing to worry about when you see these individual drops, if you're in these ETF funds or something that is well diversified and well positioned for you as an individual, which is what I believe you do well as well, John, is really finding something that works for each client.
Right. And just for everyone out there who may not know what an ETF is, an ETF is, I'll let you explain.
So an ETF is an exchange traded fund. And essentially what it does is, we'll take the S&P 500, for example, because people may have heard of this one the most. This index tracks the top 500 stocks in the United States. And essentially an ETF captures that same performance of this index. But the beauty of it, and if you do it right, is you find a low cost ETF fund. So maybe it's like 0.03% or 3 basis points. And you can essentially get the same returns as that index and the same returns of the market, but with exposure that's diversified. So you don't need to go and invest in Apple and Amazon and Google. You could just have exposure to it in an ETF, an exchange traded fund.
And there are any number of flavors of those ETFs. So a lot of people on the podcast probably have heard of mutual funds, and especially the older set have heard of mutual funds. Mutual funds is the way I describe it, and I made the sausage. I was a mutual fund portfolio manager for many years. A mutual fund does a similar thing as an exchange traded fund. However, they're much less efficient. And they tend to be, although not always, they tend to be higher cost, which is why at Guardian Rock, we have essentially zero mutual funds in our portfolios.
Wow, really? And that's great.
Yeah, we have a few closed-end funds that we use for very specific purposes, but for the most part, there are zero mutual funds because I believe you can find, to your point, much more efficient exchange traded funds, or since it's what I did managing portfolios, we also hold a lot of individual securities as well. So one of the things that I always point out, this is the in the meat of things for today, is that a bond, right? A bond mutual fund essentially takes what was meant to be a fixed income instrument and makes it into a type of equity. So when people think they're getting the exposure to the bond market in a mutual fund, same thing happens a bit in some, not all, exchange traded funds, is instead of getting something that you pay X number of dollars and then you know what your par is going to be at the end, you get the conglomeration of all these different bonds into one portfolio, as well as all the individual investors that are investing and pulling money out. So there is no par amount at the end. So you no longer have a true fixed income investment with a mutual fund. It's one of the things I kind of guide people through and try and explain to them why they may not get the same type of experience in a mutual fund or exchange traded fund that is a fixed income instrument. Yeah, that was the boring part. Yeah. That was the boring part of our podcast today.
Yeah, that was the educational part where we get nitty gritty. But this is such a beautiful conversation because it really shows the generational differences, to be fair, of the ways in which we used to invest. And we have to give ourselves grace because, as John and I were speaking about before, it's like 401ks and Roth IRAs, we spoke about this over lunch, are so new. These are brand new instruments or vehicles. I believe the Roth IRA or 401k was started in 1990s something. And
the Roth was in the 90s, but the 401k goes back a little bit further than that, but not much. Right. Not much further back. I believe it was in the late 70s, early 80s, I believe is when I don't know how, I have to look that up, but it's not that
crazy. That's crazy because prior to that we had pension funds and those investments were managed for us. But now us as employees in the States need to take ownership of our own finances, which is a beautiful thing. And you really get to choose what works best for you. But yeah, it's all so new. And even ETFs aren't new. It was really, Vanguard kind of took charge on that and created low-cost ETFs for us, John Bogle, and provided opportunities to us that we otherwise didn't have. And I found on Wall Street, that was a big shift of going to lower costs. And I'm excited for the future to see where things go and what will be next.
So fun story. So when I was working, I was working for Morgan Stanley, and we were having conversations with the Unit Investment Trust division, actually. And the first, what we consider ETFs, right, is the diamonds, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the SPY. Well, those are actually unit investment trusts. Very few people know this. They're 100-year unit investment trusts. And so when those were created, we began to talk about, someday we're going to have a unit investment trust that is traded every day and traded every second of every day, just like a stock. I wonder what that'll be called. And then over time, all of a sudden, this exchange traded fund became into existence. So I'm showing my age here, but it was a lot of fun to watch that all happen.
No,
and
but that's amazing. Yeah.
They're commonplace, right? They're all over.
Right.
And that's very powerful tools.
Oh, incredibly powerful. And That's just incredible because look at us. I learned that today. That's something new that I didn't know they were UITs, but that is just incredible because that's a good thing for the listeners to know that you learn something new every single day in finance. And there are patterns of what we can invest in, but it's actually an exciting thing. It's nothing to be scared of or have fear around. It's an exciting opportunity for you to be involved in something that can produce financial freedom. So that's amazing. I didn't know that, and I will take that with me. So does the 100-year contract, does it expire or what happens
Expires
after
in 100 years. So, I mean, less than
Oh,
that now because they've been around a long time. But
mhm.
yeah, we'll have to see what happens when that happens. I'm sure they'll figure out something because they're so widely used.
Mhm.
So, yeah, fun facts from an old guy.
I love that, John. I love that. That's incredible. I didn't know that. So that's really cool. I just referred to them as indices and indexes, but that's great. UITs.
Well, the other thing I like to stress to people too, and a lot of people in your audience too, that you're speaking to, which is, somebody who's just sort of starting out, is please do not. And this is one of the few times I say do not think of any one particular product or tool that's out there as being inherently bad. There's very, very few of those. There are a few, but very few of those. Like people will, I hear this every day, depending on what side of the aisle you're on, right? Is that, mutual funds are bad, or exchange traded funds are bad, or annuities are bad, or any kind of insurance is bad. Well, the truth is, you mix those all up. Where you have to be cautious, I think, is when you're talking with somebody who is just a mutual fund sales guy
Yes.
or just an ETF sale or just an annuity or an insurance salesperson, right? Then
Yeah,
you have to be really careful. But what you want to look for is somebody like yourself that knows how to put all of the puzzle pieces together
exactly.
and understand the strengths and weaknesses of everything, because it gets more than complicated, right? It gets complex. And
And
that's what,
complexity is the enemy of execution.
yes, right. Yes, exactly. So you know how to do that because you lived it on Wall
Mhm.
Street, and now you're taking that down. I love this, that you're at your stage. You don't have to do what you're doing, which is what another thing I love. But you've
Yeah.
chosen to do this to help
Mhm.
people. That's why
Mhm.
as soon as we started talking, I wanted to have you on the show so people understood there are people out there that don't even have to do what they're doing. They do it because they want to, they like it, and they want to try and help people.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's the whole reason why I'm here. I think there was a bit of a frustration as well, which is sometimes how these things are born. I had leveraged the coaching I had on Wall Street of what they had available. And at one point they said, "We're sorry, we can't help you. You've kind of like done everything we know." So I had to go out on my own and figure out how can I build, the most optimal, easiest, simplest portfolio that I don't have to worry about, and how can I organize my finances, and really went off on my own. But you're so right. And this is where we're similar in that everything comes from the heart. And I do this because I know the pain or the struggle of not knowing what to do with my finances and feeling a bit lost or confused in the beginning. And it seems like this big, it's like muddy waters that aren't clear yet. But the
mm,
path to clarity is so much simpler than we think. And we'll see this over the years, I think, of the next 10, 20 years, that this will just become so much easier for us to understand. And why not take advantage of that now? And it really does come from the heart, because I love what I do. I really do. I love working with young women. I love when I see their reaction when they say, "Oh, really? It's that easy?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is that easy." And now look at how, and then I'll show them the compound interest calculator, and they'll see how just an extra $20 every month will get them to their goals. And it blows their mind. And you really start to take accountability and ownership in your own finances. And as a woman, I think that's so important and helps with confidence in yourself and knowing that you are striving towards the things that you want. So it is an act of love and service. Absolutely.
yeah, and you don't have to depend. It's really not so complex. There's a trap that we fall into, right? The trap of not simplifying enough, to make it understandable, but also oversimplifying, which you don't want to do that either. Sorry. So there's a balance there. But when people's eyes are open, like you just said, and you can show them using this crazy thing, this 4-letter word we call math, right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing the power of it over time and the power of doing the right thing consistently.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
love that you are doing that. So sorry about that. My phone just went off. This is what happens with the live
John's a busy
podcast.
guy, everyone. He's a busy guy. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to sit down because I know that you are serving at a high level. So I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. And so before we close up, is there one thing you want to, just a message that you want to deliver to people that are listening today?
Absolutely. My message would be the sooner the better. Just start now. Just start giving yourself the opportunity that you deserve to take control of your finances. And whether you work with John or me, it really doesn't matter. The objective is really that you gain some value from a conversation like this, and it opens your mind to what's possible for you. And that first mindset shift of, this is actually something I can do, and it's way simpler than I think. And, giving yourself that gift really of managing your finances and having the confidence around it and knowing that you're helping your future self and taking a long-term view of your life, because I think, especially with young people, it's commonplace to not think about when I'm 60 or 70 because I'm young and I want to be free and have a great time. And that's amazing. That is our youth. We're so grateful to have that. But it's so important to also just plan ahead a little bit and to think, where do I want to be in 10, 20, 30 years? And what will the quality of my life be if I start taking action like this now? So that's my message to the 20s and 30s of the world, or even, 40s if you're just starting out, and really give yourself some grace. And there's no judgment. You're about to embark on an amazing journey if you're not already on it, of managing your finances. And yeah, I mean, you can get in touch with me on my website, marielledagassan.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I post on there quite frequently. I'll post some of my exclusive insights or strategies or some fun things. And that's the last thing. It's supposed to be fun. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. That's something my dad taught me from a young age. So make it fun, because this life is meant to be fun and we're meant to enjoy it. So that's my final message.
Yeah, that's a great one. And so I'm going to slow that down just a little bit. If you want to get in touch, it's MarielleDagassan @gmail.com. That's one way, right?
Yeah,
and that is the same. Is that the same? Your website? What's your
My
website?
website is my first and last name. So it's Marielle, Marielle Dagassan, Dagassan @gmail.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn in the same.
All right. And I will also include that in the show notes down below. And of course, those of you who are interested in my daily market update, feel free to look at that. That's going to be down below as well. And I'm at guardianrockwealth.com. Or you can very easily get in touch with me. Just text the word life to 321-421-5213. Thanks for listening today. Marielle, thank you so much for being on. You are clearly hyper successful and you've done so much in such a short period of time. It's always exciting to talk to people like that and show people what's possible on the Building Your Life podcast. So thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, John. Such a gift to be here. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Yes.